Hitler, Mussolini, Napoleon, Alexander. You know what these names have in common? They are some of the most influential people who were responsible to shape up world history. In fact, if they wouldn't have been there, probably the world as we know it would not be the same. But do you know they are not that well regarded in our well, have you ever wondered why? Well, that's because of their brutal dictatorship. That's right. Let me see if I can explain this better to you with the help of our poem, Ozymandias, which is written by P.B. Shelley. Now, this sonnet, Ozymandias, explores the question of what happens to these tyrant kings and cruel world leaders and despotic leaders more generally. And the broken down statue of Ozymandias in Shelley's poem points to the short-lived nature of political regimes and tyrannical power. Now, as a sonnet, it has only 14 lines. But in this limited space, Shelley explores a number of issues which are very important. This sonnet, Ozymandias, explores the question of what happens to tyrant kings and to despotic or cruel world leaders more generally. So this was a little teaser of the poem. We shall discuss it in detail after we get to know about our poet for this session, Percy Bysshe Shelley, a little bit. Now, Shelley was born on the 4th of August in the year 1792 and was one of the major English Romantic poets. He is renowned to be one of the finest lyric as well as epic poets in the English language. Now, he had a very happy and contented childhood, which he spent largely in country pursuits such as fishing and hunting. Shelley was educated at some of the prestigious colleges like Eton and Oxford. Isn't it impressive? But in the year 1811, he anonymously published a pamphlet called The Necessity of Atheism, where his disbelief about God fetched him a lot of opposition, and for this he was expelled from college. Shelley is perhaps best known for his classic poems, one of which is Ozymandias, Ode to the West Wind and To a Skylark. His other major works include a groundbreaking verse drama, The Cenci, and long visionary poems such as Queen Mab, Alastor, The Revolt of Islam, etc., and of course his final unfinished work, The Triumph of Life. Now, Shelley was also a key member of a close circle of visionary poets and writers, which include Lord Byron, Leigh Hunt, Thomas Love Peacock, and his own second wife, Mary Shelley, who is famously the author of Frankenstein. He died on the 8th of July, 1822, and now, a radical in his poetry as well as his political and social views, Shelley did not see fame during his lifetime, but recognition for his poetry grew steadily after he died. Let's just recite the poem. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, near them on the sand. Half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair, nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the low and level sands stretch far away." Now, Ozymandias is a 14-line sonnet which is named after the Greek name of the Egyptian king Ramses II, who died in 1234 BC. The speaker describes a meeting with someone who has traveled to a place where ancient civilization once did exist. The sonnet is divided in an octave and a sestet. That means the first stanza consists of 8 lines, while the second stanza consists of 6 lines. But to make this poem a little simpler for you, we have divided it into 4 parts. Ready? Let's look at each part individually and understand the poem in detail. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." Now, the poem begins immediately with an encounter between the speaker and a traveler that comes from an antique land. And antique here means something really old. Now, this traveler could be coming from a place that is really ancient or has an older history, say like Greece or Rome or ancient Egypt. So when this traveler begins his speech, he tells the speaker about a pair of stone legs which are somehow still standing in the middle of a desert. He further explains that those legs are huge and trunkless. That means they don't have a torso. So it's just a pair of legs with no body. So see this pic. Do you see what I mean now? Now, while reading this part, we came across something interesting and some new words. Let's learn their meanings, all right? The first word we have is traveler. It's a simple one. It refers to a person who is, well, who's traveling and often travels. In this poem, the traveler is a person who has been to Egypt and has seen the Ozymandias statue lying ruined in the desert. Now, the next phrase we have is antique land. It denotes an ancient country. It most probably refers to Egypt. The next word we have is vast, which means huge in size. Then we have trunkless legs, which refers to legs without a torso, which means that it is only a pair of legs with no upper part of the body. The last word we have is the desert, which denotes the Egyptian part of the Sahara Desert. So look at this line so we can analyze the figures of speech and use it here. Two vast and trunkless legs of stone. What is it that you notice immediately? Tell me quick. The sound of T is repeated. Very good. And this gives it a poetic effect. Do you remember what this is called? Now, we've studied it before, come on. Alliteration. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same consonant, letter, or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. And with this, we have come to the end of this video, where we learn about the speaker's experience on meeting a traveler from an ancient land. This traveler tells the speaker about a pair of trunkless legs of stone which still stand in the desert. The face of this statue is shattered and only half visible in the sand. But the arrogant and hostile nature of the subject is accurately carved by the sculptor. Now we have more of this poem left to discuss. So don't move away. I'm going to meet you in the next video. Tutormate. For more amazing video lectures, download the free app on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store.